Hello and welcome to Insights with me, Farzana, Uncut Conversations That Matter. In this series, we have explored what it truly takes for businesses to stay resilient in today's environment. We have spoken about financial resilience, we have explored people resilience, and today we move into something that quietly determines whether any plan actually works: operations. Because the reality is very simple. Many organizations have a plan, but very few have the capability to execute it under pressure. And that's exactly what we are unpacking today. Today, I'm joined once again by someone who brings deep expertise in business continuity, resilience, and operational strategy. Mr. Sarma joins us to help us understand what operational continuity really means, and more importantly, what most businesses are getting wrong. Welcome back, Mr. Sharma. Always a pleasure to have you.
It's always my pleasure to be with you. Thank you,
Looking
brother.
forward to what we are going to chat about today.
Definitely.
Yeah, so let's just dive in. When we talk about operational continuity, what does that actually mean in practice, and how is it different from a general business continuity plan?
Excellent. So that's actually something which people often get confused and they think like, business continuity plan itself means operational continuity. See, business continuity plan is like the canvas, and the operational continuity plan is the core or the crux of the painting.
Okay.
There are other factors also that you have in your painting, but the core part is what is the operational, because operational continuity plan is about the execution layer, the actual execution of the various things.
Okay.
While the BCP talks about can we survive, the bigger questions in general, and each pillar of the business continuity plan, like finance, which we have discussed, or the supply chain we have discussed, or the people resilience we have discussed,
Mhm.
they all address certain aspects of the business.
Okay.
Similarly, operation plan is very, very specific to what are those operational continuities that we have to like what must and should run
Mm.
despite any challenges, and at what level can so obviously, like for example, airport operations got disrupted. So does it mean like continue complete shutdown? Can there be no person inside? It cannot so happen. There has to be that minimum set of employees that would be taking care of or handling the airport to ensure that it is safe and sound, or if it the minimum things are running,
Yeah.
or there are no challenges or issues, or
Mhm.
the crisis doesn't become deeper. So what kind of, therefore, who was the one who's doing what kind of people, what kind of systems, where is that, what level of, and within how long should we be able to come back into the operational status? That is what is the operational pillar about. So it's like, if you have to say, what are those critical services that you're deciding?
Right.
What are the dependencies, whether it is the people, system, sites, vendors, utilities, all that?
Okay.
Whether it is that recovery targets, which is like RTO, RPO, which we will discuss in detail, but these operational terminologies and the times and the targets.
Mm.
Then what are the fallback methods, and your documentation process and the recovery methods,
Mhm.
and whether any of these has been verified or not. So these are all part of the operational continuity plan, and therefore, like so you need a BCP to survive. You
Mm.
need an operational continuity plan to actually keep moving.
Mm.
At least to ensure that your customers and are safe, and they're able to face minimal disruption. So that is what is operational continuity on.
That's very interesting because I guess many leaders would assume having a plan means being prepared, right?
Yeah,
That's what we're trying to
that's
figure
right.
out here. All right. Many organizations say we have a BCP in place. Okay, but
Right.
you are an expert. You're experienced in this. Tell us, in your experience, how much of that is a real capability? And how much is just a document sitting on a shelf? In
Right.
your experience, how does it work?
I think, like how we discussed in the episode one,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
definitely we have already discussed the context in general about BCP being in place, and most often, like 70 to 80% of the organizations who have business continuity plans still fail. The reason is because there is that first group of people who have no meaningful plan. They are very clear. They understand they have nothing in place. There is that second set of people who have a very beautiful plan in place, well formatted, documented. Probably they've used some of the best consulting firms to develop it,
Mm-hmm.
but they have never actually seen it in action, seen it work. So it would satisfy us as an auditor,
Mm.
but when it comes to the real disruption, it will fail.
Yeah.
And then there is the third group, which actually has the live capability, who has tested it and made sure that it is updated on regular times. And therefore, those are the people who will not fail in spite of disruptions.
Mm.
So, in the that is how the classifications are. But how do you say that are we an organization which is more a document oriented, or we are in the live part? So just look at whether your documentation says, do you have owners,
Mm.
specific names of the people with their contact details, or you just have titles, head of operations, HR head, or you have the name and contact number of the person. Whether the alternates for each of them have been trained and ready. Do you know who's number one, number two for
Mm.
each operation? If your CEO is not available to take a decision, who else can take the decision in time of crisis?
Mm.
Right? So, within how much time should this disruption be recovered? How much time should do you think that with a downtime would not significantly impact the business, and after that it would significantly impact the business of the company and of the customers also? Both have to be looked at.
Good. Both
Do
have.
you have those numbers and plans? If you do not have the proper numbers, then do you have workaround plans, like any manual operating procedures, like if in case the technology fails? So do you have some manual documentation process, procedures and all that?
Mm.
Do you have a way of if your backup fails, then what is the
What
worst case
is
scenario?
the next? Yeah.
Right? And ultimately, have your team's members been trained for this? Are they aware, or is it only at the leadership team level that it has been the information is available? So
Mm.
these are the real things that you have to, when you look at a business continuity plan, you can say that. Yeah, in UAE specifically, NCEMA for 7,000 is a standard for national business continuity management and systems. So this particular standard, it aligns with ISO 22301 and 31,000.
Mm-hmm.
This is something which is a little better in the sense, because they don't just ask when did you do you have a plan in place, when
Mm.
did you last update.
Mm.
There is that particular question also. So definitely, if you really follow the systems and standards,
Mm.
there is that chance. But how does an auditor or a third person know? As I
Mm.
said, 6 questions, if you ask and drill down, you will be able to answer that part.
Okay. So it's just a relationship between the perception and the reality
Yeah,
to work between that. Okay. You just talked about concepts of RTO and RPO.
yeah.
Uh, these are the key to operational resilience, right? Yet there are many leaders, they can't define their own numbers. So, what do these terms mean? Let's explore that. And why is that so dangerous that
Right.
people are not using it? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a very important question, especially in operational continuity planning. These two terms, RTO and RPO, are essential and crucial.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are these terms? RTO means real time objective.
Right.
It is the maximum amount of time a particular a critical process or a system
Mm.
can be done before the impact becomes unacceptable. unacceptable, as I said, it could be to this organization or to the customers. Like
Right.
for example, we know like we had Amazon data centers getting disrupted.
Yeah.
So how long did they take to recover, and how much time did it impact the how much time before it impacted the customers?
Mm.
So that is what you're trying to talk about. And it's not just about IT, it can also be about other factors also, which I'll explain after I explain the second term, which is RPO,
RP.
recovery point objective.
Mm-hmm.
RPO is recovery point objective. So this is the maximum amount of, let's say, a data loss or a loss that an organization can tolerate before it creates a series objective. So one is about the time, one is about the loss.
Right.
So what is it that we are trying to talk about here? In IT terms, I think it is very easy to understand. Let's say, for example, to continue the data center example, Amazon, before how much time for it to recover before it becomes damaging is the RTO.
Okay.
What is the amount of loss that the organization can bear before it becomes significant for them to restore? Like, for example, what amount of data loss is manageable? Is 15 minutes of data loss manageable, or 1 hour of data loss manageable is the question.
Right.
Now let's look at in other sectors. So while I have started off with the IT terms, and most organizations think these are IT related and not other sectors, I'll give you examples for other sectors also.
Please.
Let's say, for example, in hospitality management,
Mm-hmm.
a customer is trying to book your hotel rooms, and they are not able to book. If when we are talking about face to face, not just the IT part of it, can I check in this particular customer, or can I not check in this particular customer? A customer is trying to use your beverage services. What do you do? Within how long can you say, like banking, for example, often in some countries, you have that you go to the bank and they say the server is down, I cannot do any payment, I cannot do any transfers, nothing can be done.
Yeah.
What extent is it acceptable before you start losing these customers?
Yes.
Today, very well, in a hospitality or even healthcare for that matter, when the patients come and you say, my system is down, I'm not able to get your insurance processing done.
Yeah.
I just moved to the next clinic. Today, clinics are not too far away, right? It's you just move on to the next clinic and get it done. So what is that point of objective before which it starts impacting the business also? So that is what we are trying to talk about. So across sectors, these are relevant and practical terms, which you have to keep in mind in terms of an operation plan. Now, coming to the second half of the question, which you said, what happens if you ignore these terms?
Yes.
Right. So first, if you do not have these terms in place or define these terms in place with clear target, specific numbers and quantity, one, somebody is making an assumption for you, or when I'm talking in the case of the second set of companies who have a plan and a document, but nothing in action. People who do not have it is completely they're all anyway going to have a major issue.
Yes.
So even the people who have a document but have a random number placed in it. So what is going to happen is the business decisions are being decided by somebody without a backup. They would probably become meaningless. Like something, if in case you cannot recover within 30 minutes, is going to give you a significant problem, but imagine in your document you put 2 hours. It's a huge impact for the organization.
It is.
Right? So that is what we are trying to say. Like if in case somebody, imagine a hospital with no patient check-in possible, or there there is a queue for 2-3 hours to complete your entry check-in process, or a hospitality industry, you want to check in your room and it is taking 2 hours for you to check in. Would the customer be happy for the process? What is the feedback that you will get after that? You may have the customer for then, but the business impact is significantly higher later. So without these defined targets and the real incident, therefore you're only talking about vague numbers without, and the business impact could be far significant than what you thought. Second is, if you do not have these numbers, then you do not know what to prioritize, which is the one which is the most critical and which is the next critical. What is the sequencing of these things? You will never know these. So when you do not know these, at the time of crisis, the people will be getting into the debates of this,
Which one to go
which
first?
which lose again, delays significantly the entire recovery process. Then third is, without knowing these numbers, what kind of investment decisions can you make? Like, for example, as I was saying, like within 30 minutes, if you is data loss is acceptable, or a 4 hours is acceptable, or zero loss is acceptable. Depending on the industry, depending on the sector, these data losses make a significant impact. Right. In a hospitality sector, probably a 30 minutes or 1 hour also you can manually override and then recover for maybe a couple of hours.
Maybe, yeah.
Healthcare, probably. But can you do it in a banking? Can you do it in an IT industry? They have to be real time. You cannot accept a data loss, otherwise significantly damages the business reputation and your revenue streams. Right. So that is where the career tree business plan talks very clearly about these and these functions in the business impact analysis, and we talk about how do you do these things very clearly.
So this creativity, the plan which you're talking about, is it a course, or what is it? If people want to know more about that.
Yeah, so we have a workshop that we are offering to people. It could be at an individual level or at a corporate level.
Okay.
And we also consult these organizations on how to make these effective, how to ensure you're in the third quadrant where everything is live and the crisis does not damage significantly than what you wanted to be allowed.
Okay.
So those are the things that we do. We help and build these for the organizations and make sure that these real-time analysis are done and you are ready in real terms.
Okay, so some whoever is interested can get back to you and sharing your number and everything. Okay, let's get back to the topic. For an operations leader, whoever is listening right now to this podcast, what are those three things they should verify this week to know whether their continuity capability is real or just theoretical?
Excellent question. So there, first thing is verify your critical services and dependencies. Okay. So what are those critical factors that you cannot allow to get disrupted? Like, for example, in a healthcare, the ICU is the most critical. That's the first thing that you have to make sure that it is working, and not the billing system. Billing system is important, but the more critical is your ICU. Patient's life is more important. So like this, in each sector, you have those critical things. Probably in hospitality, safety is the first thing. So what are those most critical things, and what is the minimum, maximum disruption that you can allow? So those, and what are the dependencies that it has? So it could be the power, it could be your oxygen in your ICU, and so on and so forth. So those, what are those dependencies? That's your first thing, that you have to map these things very critically and understand what is the business impact of these services and the dependencies completely downstream. As you remember, I've been talking always about downstream is extremely important.
Yes.
Second is verify your targets and the last test date. That is, when you are talking about these critical dependencies and you are saying, for example, 30 minutes is an acceptable disruption, have you done a real-time simulation? And checked whether 30 minutes is acceptable or unacceptable?
Correct. Yeah.
And when did you do this last? You have done this 3 years back, 2 years back, doesn't make any sense. The maximum is 12 months. In the last 12 months, you should have done this simulation, because there are a lot of factors which change, whether the people, whether the process upgrades, the design might have changed. There are a number of factors which can play a role, and therefore maximum 12 months is the time that we say for updating it. Okay. And third is verify your manual workaround. So that is whatever is your critical workflow, whether it is your customer service, whether it's that billing process, whether it is that check-in process, what is the manual workaround in case the technology is not working, for example.
Okay, perfect.
That you need to have in place. For a manufacturing organization now, your technology is you have automated the process. Now the automation is not working. How do you still keep the line running?
Correct. Correct. Very
Right. So each sector has those specific requirements, and therefore, what is your workaround during these particular status? And of course, you have to very clearly remember that operational continuity is not about making sure everything is running smoothly.
yes.
It's about making sure that the uncompromisable is uncompromised,
Mm,
and you're recovering the others accordingly
mm.
within your disruption accepted tolerances.
Very, very practical.
So that is what I say, and these all can be done only when you really do a simulator.
Correct. Correct. I think something the leaders can immediately reflect on. This was a very practical and hopefully helpful for them as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get in real time. If there is a real disruption, and we see the disruption happening today, now, in the systems, in the supply chain, or in people, what is that first thing that would actually break in most organizations?
Right. So that's a very important question, and it probably sounds similar to the question that we asked again in the episode 1.
Yes.
At which point of time I said, like, it's the leadership that creates a problem.
Yes.
But when it comes to the operational perspective of it,
Mm,
then what does this disruption going to really hit first?
mm,
What is the critical problem that is getting impacted?
mm,
So here again, it is not some technology or not some system or some process. It is most importantly the clarity. If you do not have an effective business continuity plan in place, is the clarity of what is getting affected,
mm.
what matters the most, what is the most critical thing, who
Mhm.
is deciding what to do in that particular circumstances and how to recover in that decision making process, and what is the next step. Because unless that clarity is in place, the frontline member would not know what to do. He's stream. Imagine, like, in the as soon as the disruption happens,
Mm,
you have to take a decision from your CEO. Now
mm,
you're trying to call or reach out to your CEO. He's on a flight or something. You're not able to do. What do you do?
mm.
You allow him to take the complete flight and land, and then only you get into the context.
Yes.
The organization may not be able to bear that consequence, for example, right? So who is the alternate? Therefore, is it clear when this particular CEO is not available? Can a GM take, or can a store manager take, or can a individual nurse take that particular decision in that particular instant? Depending on each sector, like, you have to have those fallback plans in the first set of. And again, like, for example, in safety context, like, whoever is the one facing first, pressing the fire alarm, and then trying to take the necessary action, working on evacuation plan and rescue plan, these are probably the first things. In an operational continuity, in terms of a manufacturing organization, the line has stopped. Now it's not to do with the safety. Then what do I do? He might have to ask at least the supervisor minimum before he takes a decision, or the quality in charge at that particular point. So each sector has on these things, but this clarity should be available to the person who's at the execution, who's facing the customer or the actual operational disruption. Those are the people who have to be very, very clear on what has to be done, what level of decisions they can take, and if a decision they cannot take, whom they should approach, option 1 and option 2. Then prioritization. As I was talking, like, if there is no clarity on what is your most critical thing,
Yes.
then you are arguing and whether this particular service is more important or that particular service is more important. Let's say a maintenance team or an IT team, which one do they work on? These are all questions and challenges and arguments that you cannot have at the point of disruption, which you should be very clear at the beginning.
Absolutely.
So these are the things that we have to be very, very clear when we are talking about disruptions. And unless this clarity is available to the last employee in the organization, it is definitely going to disrupt more than what it should have otherwise.
Oh, really? That's great. You put this into perspective, and I think because most people don't think about failure points until they're forced to. I think this is a very, very good way of giving them understanding if
Sure.
they're still looking for one. Okay, let's look at why do many businesses underestimate manual workarounds? And what usually happens when those workarounds have never been tested? This is really, I think it's very important.
Yeah, it's a very important thing. Like most often, what happens is people think that manual workaround is simple.
Yes.
They assume that it is uncomplicated.
Yes.
It is very easy to do. So as soon as something fails, go ahead, do it manually.
Yeah.
Now, what do you mean by that? Doing it manually.
Mm,
There could be like, especially if you are a sector where Gen Z is involved, they do not really know the manual
exactly.
workaround. They do not know what to do. You don't know what are the like for a simple check-in. What are the things that I have to do?
Yes. Yes.
What information should I collect?
Correct.
I understand ID card, but more than that, there is certain information that you have to log in.
Absolutely.
So how do I do that? Where is this information available? Is there a manual form that I have to fill in such kind of a disruption?
With that.
So these are things that the people believe first, that people know they will have the memory, they'll go back at the
Mm,
top.
mm.
But at the bottom level, especially when the Gen Zs are higher, they don't really know any,
Yeah,
because
they're
they're not used to that kind of a working in most of the cases.
coming from different worlds.
Second, people assume that people, since they've been working day in and day out and they have the experience, they'll be able to do it.
Mm,
They know what has to happen, what kind of information has to be collected, or what kind of sequencing and logic is required there. These are all assumed,
mm.
but we never know.
We never. Mm. Yeah, that's.
And
Mm,
third, they underestimate the volume and duration. As I was saying, like, in case of, let's say, a simple thing, a clinic, the people are walking into get in, and now you have to collect, as per the UAE norms, you
mm,
have to collect certain minimum information about the patient.
mm.
And even today, the doctor visits are all completely documented so that the insurance does not have a problem, and the entire claim process is online.
Right.
So the system
Right.
has failed. Your internet is not working. Now, what do I do? What does the doctor do? How do you claim the process? What
Mm,
do you know whether the person has an insurance or does not have an insurance to qualify for this particular thing?
right.
Now, so you are probably having that manual form which you are filling, you are understanding, taking that signature.
Mm,
But what amount of time does this take? And
mm,
how does it disrupt your entire volume? Now, suddenly your patient queue is typically 20 or 30 people, and now if what used to take 5 minutes time now starts taking 20 minutes of time, imagine the queue that is getting impacted. Imagine the customer service. So the volume is and the duration is something which people get ignored. Like a 5 minute disruption is different from a 2 hour or a 4 hour or an 8 hour. Each has its own impacts, right?
mm.
And finally, most often people ignore the reconciliation. Now, I have done the manual part of it, but
Mm.
how do I get it back onto the system once the disruption is, cleared?
Taken care of. Yeah.
Right? How do I ensure that, whether it is the accounts, whether it is that billing process, whether it is that patient records, how do I get it back? How do I report it to, the tourism authority about who's the customer who has checked in? If
Mm,
anything information is missing anywhere or you miss out any point, it could lead to a lot of problems for the organization, and in certain cases, fines, obviously.
mm.
So this is what we have to understand, that manual workaround seems simple, seems easier. Technology, we have to invest a lot of time and energy, but manual operations also require that kind of a process and systems in place to understand what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Like, especially for example, the form. Is it something which is easy for the person who is going to fill the form?
Mm,
Can they
mm.
understand? Can they fill it easily? Not
That's.
the person who's thinking, who's designing, for example. It cannot be as per their thought. It has to be as per the person who's actually going to fill it.
Mm,
And whether it is reflecting the updated regulations. For example, this manual form that you have created, has there any regulatory update been there, and have you updated this to capture that additional requirements? Has it been tested? Does the person know these things, understand these specifics? and what is that data points, which I've already mentioned, the data points, and that availability of those physical forms or process. They cannot just go ahead and fill in some white paper and assume that things will be
Will be.
available and documented and ready. And
Uh,
at the time of reconciliation, it is going to be hectic for the
yeah.
people. Do they operate the handle the existing customer workflow, or do they handle the recovery process of
Yeah. So
you know
what it looks like is a small gap can actually stop the operations completely if people are not
exactly.
looking into it, right? So
Exactly.
that's
And the disruption would continue much longer than what you anticipate.
absolutely, that's so true. Okay, so why do leaders invest so much time creating the plans again, but so little time in rehearsing them? And this is something
Right.
while I'm listening to what you're telling me about the disruptions and whatnot, it looks like there's a lot of time should be spent rehearsing it. And why do you think they don't actually look into it?
Right. So that's a very important question that
Mhm.
you've asked, because see,
Uh,
from a human nature perspective, when you write some very clear documented process, you feel like something has been completed.
mm,
You're happy, there is something concrete evidence. But when you're trying to rehearse it, there is a lot of exposure which happens.
mm,
Okay, what do I mean by this?
mm,
Uh, Rehearsing is not something tangible,
mm,
but first it feels like disruption and not progress, because you have to stop what you're trying to do and do something different.
right.
In paper, there is nothing which is getting affected. It's only your time, energy, effort, or a set of people's time, energy, and effort.
Correct.
But when you do a real time, you have to actually disrupt the way of your normal working
Mm,
and create and rework as per the backup plan.
got
So
it.
it looks like, why do I have to go through this horrendous task, and it may impact my business. It
Mm,
may impact unnecessarily, the customers might get affected and they may feel,
mm,
why is this organization doing, there's that lot of disruption, uncertainty which comes into the mind of the people. So psychologically, it is very difficult to accept that you need to do it real time.
mm,
Second, which most often people do not admit, or probably they don't admit it to themselves itself, is
mm.
that fear of finding out what happens if the plan doesn't work.
Ah,
What happened if something goes wrong despite my
oh wow.
detailed planning?
Oh my
you know
goodness.
that's something which people do not most often even admit it to themselves. I'm not saying they're trying to cheat the organization, or trying to showcase a positive. It sometimes just happens that you don't admit it to yourself itself, and which is a very dangerous situation, when that
Mm,
happens.
mm, wow.
Third is the compliance most often asks you for a documentation and not for a demonstration or of an evidence.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, nowadays the new, as I said in the first episode, like the financial sector is asking specifically, when did you test it and what did
Correct.
you find and all this. And similarly, like as I was saying, sometime back, NCEMA 7000 in UAE is asking for those kind of questions, but not every document or a standard or a regulation really asks for that
Mm,
yet. And most often simulation surface ownership questions that the plans can avoid. Like,
mm,
for example, is the person whom you are thinking can take a decision, is he really capable to take that decision?
mm, mm.
Uh,
True.
it requires you to, as a leader, to provide ownership to somebody to take. Are you ready to let go?
Mm,
There are a lot of these unwanted, unexpected things that the people have been trying to avoid, and a simulation will make you face these.
mm.
Whereas a plan, and theoretically, I can say, yeah, he can take the
Can
decision.
take care.
But
Yeah.
is he skilled enough? Can he really take in real time challenge?
Mm,
Those questions you don't have to answer in a documented plan.
right. Yeah.
But
Mm,
in a real time situation, you ask. And that's where our career tree very, very clearly says, like, avoid a complete tabletop exercise, and it has to be a real time simulation. And we enforce that when we try to build that for our
mm.
clients.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay. Let's look at the templates. Um, we have different sectors like retail sectors, healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, hospitalities. Um, they have, how does the operational continuity show up differently? Why can't they all have a same template they can work on? So won't it be much easier if there is a
Right.
template?
See, the major difference is the fundamentals are the same,
Hmm.
irrespective of the sector. But the difference comes in what is critical for each sector is
Sector.
different,
Yeah. Right. So there
right?
is a template,
And
but each template will
yeah, so
will vary. Sorry, go ahead, please.
correct. So there are those headings which will be common. Those broad, so like for example, when we talk about RTO, RPO, what is your critical process, your workflow?
Hmm.
Headings will be the same. So the template at a macro level would be the same.
Hmm.
But when you get into the details, that regulatory requirements,
Hmm.
those critical disruptions, what is that critical disruption for each sector? Everything varies.
Hmm.
Because of that, the template in real terms cannot be exactly the same.
Hmm.
While you follow the same headings, you can create the same table, it is not exactly the same.
Hmm. That's great. So, what is more dangerous? A company with no continuity plan, or a company that believes that it is prepared but it isn't? I think you have answered this before, but I want to hear that thought
Yeah,
again. What do you think?
definitely, definitely. So it's good to reinforce this important point that what people uh, you know, cup which is already full
Yes.
cannot take anything more. So
Hmm.
once a person believes they're very good,
Yeah.
they cannot understand what is the problem. And therefore, the ones who believe that they are prepared but
Hmm.
not have actually done the real time simulation or the planning, so those are the people
Hmm.
who are in a more dangerous situation than the ones who are not, because a company which does not knows that they don't have a continuity plan is working on like, I don't know, let's work together and clear
We'll
this up.
it. Yeah.
So they will probably come out with a more effective plan
Okay.
compared to somebody who believes it is there and trying to stick to that plan, and it will not work. The
Hmm.
disruption goes longer because your system, your process says something and you it is not working. Now what do I do if it does not work?
Hmm.
Like that answer is not there, and therefore you are trying to figure it out what to do next,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Wow.
So that is why I say it's always the case. And even if I have to give you statistics,
Hmm.
uh, as per FEMA, 80% of the organizations that suffer significant outage without a functional continuity capability, uh, uh, they fail within the first 18 months.
Really? Eh? Wow.
Within the first 18 months, 90% of the businesses that cannot resume operations within 5 days of disaster will
Hmm.
fail within a year.
Okay.
So these are the kind of statistics which is already available, and the importance is there.
Hmm.
But it is for you to really use this information and understanding and make yourself ready for this. And again, as I said at the start of the series, disruption is given. It
Hmm.
is going to be there, and it is going to be there probably every year, if not multiple times a year from now. That's how it is there, and therefore you have to make yourself ready for the disruptive agility and not just agility or flexibility anymore.
Correct. Correct. Okay. So, just the last question here. If any organization they want to strengthen their operational continuity in the next 30 to 90 days, what is that first step they should take today?
Right. So the first step, again, as I mentioned before, the first step is always going to be what are those critical factors, non-compromisable disruptive processes or systems that you have to make sure. You have to start with that. In the first, that's where you start.
Mm.
That's the step. You try to check the systems, the practices, build that risk analysis in terms of prioritizing these services, then build your RTO and RPO to say what are your targets within which you have to recover. The second 60 days, after the 30 days, the next 30 days is all about, you know, getting these systems in practice, trying to see whether the scenarios are really working or not working, or you have to adjust these things, and whether you have those backup people, the decision makers, do they have the required skills? If not, start training them. And the 90 days is about making sure that these loopholes are covered.
Covered. That's
So
brilliant.
that's
You have
how you have
three
to
different
go.
steps all together. That's awesome. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's conversation. If there is one key takeaway, it's this for me. Operational resilience is not about having a plan, it's about having the ability to perform when it matters most.
Sure.
If you missed our earlier episodes on financial and people resilience, I highly recommend going back and watching them because together they complete the full picture. And if this conversation resonated with you, please do like, share, and subscribe my channel. And let us know your thoughts and in the comments, please. So, Sarma, again, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate your time and I appreciate your insights. It has been wonderful talking to you. And
Pleasure
until
is mine, and thanks for
it's so much insight, so much knowledge we are, at least I am gaining from these episodes. So thank you once again. And until next time, stay prepared, stay aware, and keep building for long term. Thanks. Bye for now.
thank you.
Thank you.